Come and put your hand flat against the side of this pot. Go on, it will not burn you. But you feel that? Still warm, warmer than a mug of coffee left too long on the table. Now here's the thing I want you to sit with for a moment. There has been no fire under this pot since early this morning. No stove burning, no coals, no gas, no wire running to any power company. It has stood in a plain wooden box in the corner of my kitchen the whole day long. And when I lift this lid, the beans inside are done all the way through. Soft, hot, cooked clean to the center, ready to set on the table for supper. They cooked themselves while I was out in the far field mending fence all afternoon. And the whole contraption that did it cost me less than $10 to put together, most of which I already had sitting out in the barn. My name is Elias Yoder. I am Amish, and I farm here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Today, I am going to show you one of the oldest and cleverest tricks a plain kitchen ever held, a way to cook a full hot meal with almost no fire at all. My grandmother called it the Haybox. Some folks call it a fireless cooker. Others a retained heat cooker or a Norwegian cooker. The name does not matter one bit. What matters is what it does. You bring your pot to a good hard boil for a few short minutes over whatever fire you have. Then you lift it off, tuck it down into a box packed tight with hay or old blankets, shut the lid, and you walk away. The food keeps right on cooking for hours on nothing but the heat it already holds inside it. No more wood to burn, no more fuel to buy, no more standing over a hot stove watching a pot simmer the whole afternoon. Now, I will be honest with you right at the start, the way I always am. This is not some secret my people invented and kept hidden in a barn. This trick belongs to the whole world and to a great many old peoples who never had fuel to waste. Sailors carried it on ships. Soldiers used it in the war when coal was rationed and every lump was precious. Whole streets of poor working folk cooked their Sunday dinner this way because they could not afford to keep a fire burning all day while they were off at the mill. It is plain, honest, worldwide knowledge, and it lives by the oldest rule my grandfather ever taught me. Waste nothing, not the heat, not the fuel, not the good hours of your day standing tied to a stove. So stay with me, and by the end of this, you will know exactly how to build one, exactly how to cook in it, what it will do, what it will not do, and the one safety rule you must never break. Let me start with why this works at all, because once you understand it, everything else falls into place plain and simple. Cooking is nothing more than holding food at a hot enough temperature for a long enough time. That is the whole of it. A pot of beans does not care whether the heat comes from a roaring fire under it or from heat trapped all around it. It only cares that it stays hot. Now, on a stove, you burn fuel the whole time to keep the pot hot, and here is the waste of it. Most of that heat is not going into your food at all. It is pouring off the sides of the pot, rising up past the handle, warming your kitchen, and then slipping out the window, gone. You are burning fuel to heat the whole room when all you wanted was to heat what is inside the pot. The Haybox does two jobs, and only two. First, you get the food good and hot, boiling hot, with a short burst of fire. Then second, you wrap it up so tight that the heat cannot escape, and you let that trapped heat finish the cooking slow and gentle over the next several hours. Think of it just like a thermos bottle, the kind a man carries his coffee in to keep it hot till noon. You do not run a little fire under your thermos. You filled it with hot coffee in the morning, and the thick walls simply keep the heat from getting out. A haybox is the very same idea, only big enough to hold a whole pot of supper. The hay, the wool blankets, the crumpled paper, all of it is doing one job, holding the heat still. Air that cannot move is the finest blanket there is. That is why hay works so well. It is full of little pockets of trapped air. That is why a bird fluffs its feathers in the cold, and why we pull a quilt over us at night. It is not the wool itself that warms you, it is all the still air caught inside it. So when I pack a pot of boiling beans down into a nest of hay and shut the lid, that pot cools down so slowly that hours later it is still hot enough to cook. The food is doing its own work quietly in the dark, needing nothing more from me. Let me tell you a bit about where this comes from, because the history of it will convince you it is real more than any words of mine. Back in the old country, in Germany and Norway and all through the north, poor families cooked this way for generations. It went by the name of the haybox because that is just what it was, a wooden crate or a barrel packed full of hay with a hollow in the middle for the pot. During the First World War, when the governments were begging people to save coal and gas for the fighting, they printed up little pamphlets teaching housewives to build these boxes, and cooking clubs sprang up teaching folks how. On the great ships, the cooks would bring the crew's porridge to a boil at night, box it up, and it was hot and done by morning with the galley fire out. On the trains, on the wagons crossing the plains, in the poorhouses and the army camps, wherever fuel was dear and time was short, the fireless cooker fed people. This is not a curiosity. This is how a great many of our great-grandparents put hot food on the table, and it worked then exactly as well as it works now. So let me show you how to build one, and I promise you it is about as simple a thing as you will ever make. You need 3 things: a box, something to insulate with, and a pot. Start with the box. It wants to be a sturdy container with a lid that closes down snug. A wooden crate is the traditional choice, and a fine one. But I have seen good hay boxes made from an old cooler, the kind folks carry picnic drinks in, which is already insulated and works a treat. I have seen them made from a cardboard box set inside another cardboard box, from a wooden chest, from a metal milk can, even from a hole dug in the ground and lined. It does not need to be pretty. It needs to be big enough to hold your pot, with a good thick nest of insulation all the way around it, underneath it, and a fat cushion on top. I would say you want at least 3 or 4 inches of packing on every side of the pot, more if you can manage it. The thicker the walls, the longer your heat holds, and the longer it holds, the better it cooks. Now for the insulation, the stuffing. Hay is the old standard, and it is called a hay box for a reason. Good dry hay or straw, packed down firm, is wonderful, cheap, and if you keep any animals at all, you have it already. But you are not limited to hay by any means. Old wool blankets work beautifully, wool being one of the finest insulators God ever made. Old towels, a worn-out quilt, sheep's wool, crumpled up newspaper, feathers, dry sawdust, dry leaves, cork, even the foam packing that comes in a parcel if that is what you have. Anything dry that traps still air and does not pack down flat. What you want to avoid is anything that will hold damp or go moldy, so keep it dry, and anything that packs down solid and squeezes the air out, because it is the trapped air doing all the work. I like to build a firm nest in the bottom, set the pot down into it, pack the sides tight all around, and then have a thick pillow or a folded blanket to lay right down on top of the pot lid before I close the box. That top cushion matters more than folks think, because heat rises and the top is where most of it wants to escape. The pot itself matters too, more than you would guess. You want a heavy pot with a good tight-fitting lid. Cast iron is the very best because it holds a great deal of heat in its thick walls, but any heavy pot will serve. The heavier the pot and the more food in it, the better this works. And here is why. A big, heavy pot full of hot food holds a tremendous store of heat, and it gives that heat up slowly. A little thin pan with a cup of food in it cools off fast no matter how you wrap it. So the rule is, fill your pot up. A hay box loves a full pot. If you're only cooking a small amount, put it in the smallest pot that holds it, so there is no empty space, or the food will cool too quick. And that lid must be tight. Every wisp of steam that escapes is heat leaving. Some folks even lay a clean cloth over the pot under the lid to seal it better. A snug lid, a heavy pot filled up full, that is what you want going into the box. Now here is how you actually cook in it, step by step. And this is where folks make their mistakes, so listen close. First, you prepare your food and put it in the pot with the right amount of water, just as if you meant to cook it on the stove the whole way through. Then you set it on your fire or your stove, and you bring it to a good hard rolling boil, not a gentle warm, a real boil, and you let it boil hard for a few minutes so that the whole pot, the food, the water, the iron of the pot itself is all brought right up to full heat. This is the most important step of all. You are loading the pot with all the heat it is going to cook on, so you must get it good and hot all the way through before it goes in the box. Do not rush this part. Then, quick as you can so you do not lose that heat standing about, you carry the pot to your haybox, set it down in the nest, pack the insulation snug all around and over the top, shut the lid, and leave it be. And here is the hard part for most folks. You do not open it. Every time you lift that lid to peek, you let the heat out and you set the cooking back. You leave it shut the whole time and let it do its quiet work. Let me give you some real numbers so you know what to expect, because this is where it becomes useful instead of just clever. Take dried beans, a pot of them. On the stove, you might simmer them 2 or 3 hours, tending the fire the whole time. In the hay box, you soak them overnight as usual, bring them to a hard boil for about 10 minutes in the morning, then box them up. 4 to 6 hours later, they are done, soft and hot, and you never touch the fire again after those 10 minutes. Rice is even quicker. Bring your rice and water to a boil. Let it boil just 2 or 3 minutes, then into the box, and in about 45 minutes to an hour, you have perfect fluffy rice that never scorched on the bottom because there was no fire there to scorch it. Whole grains, wheat berries, barley, and oats for your breakfast porridge. These are made for the hay box. Bring your oats and water to a boil at night for 1 or 2 minutes. Box them up before bed, and in the morning you wake to a pot of hot, creamy porridge waiting for you, cooked while you slept on no fuel at all. Stews and soups are perhaps the finest thing of all to cook this way. A tough cut of meat, the cheap cuts, the shanks and the shoulders and the necks that need long, slow cooking to go tender, these do beautifully. You brown your meat, add your vegetables and your water or broth. Bring the whole pot to a hard boil for 15 or 20 minutes, then box it up and leave it 4, 5, 6 hours. That long, gentle heat with no boiling and no stirring breaks the meat down tender as anything. And because it never boils hard in the box, nothing sticks and nothing burns, and the flavors marry up slow and deep. It is the same principle as the slow cooker the English plug into the wall, only yours costs nothing at all to run. Root vegetables, a pot of potatoes, beets, turnips, all cook up fine. Dried peas and lentils for soup. Wonderful, even a whole chicken if you get it boiling hard enough and long enough first, and your box holds its heat well, will cook through. But the gentle ones, the beans and grains and stews, those are where the hay box truly shines. Now let me tell you the mistakes that make folks say it does not work, because nearly every failure comes down to one of a handful of things, and they are all easy to fix. The first and biggest is not getting the pot hot enough before it goes in. If you only warm it, it has no heat to cook on and it just sits there going cold. Bring it to a hard, full, rolling boil every time. The second mistake is a box that is too loose or too thin. If your insulation is thin or packed so tight it has squeezed the air out, or damp, the heat leaks away too fast. Pack it generous, keep it dry, keep it fluffy. The third is a pot too big for the food, all that empty airspace inside the pot cooling everything down. Match your pot to your food and fill it full. The fourth is peeking. I will say it again because everybody does it. Do not open the box to look. Every peek costs you heat you cannot get back. And the fifth is not leaving it long enough. It is slow cooking. Give it the hours it needs. If you are unsure, leave it longer rather than shorter, for it does not hurt the food to sit warm in there a while. Here is the one safety point, and I will not skip it because it is the most important thing I will say all day. There is a range of warm temperatures, roughly between 40 degrees and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, that the food safety folks call the danger zone, And it is called that because that is the warmth where bad bacteria wake up and multiply and can make a person sick. Your Haybox works by keeping food hot, well up above that danger zone for the whole cooking time. And done right, it does that just fine, but you must respect it. So here are the rules. Get your food to a full boil before it goes in, always. Use a good hot box that holds its heat so the food stays up above 140 degrees the whole time it is in there, not slowly drifting down cold. Do not cook such a small amount or use such a thin box that it cools too fast. And when you take it out to serve, especially if it has been in there many hours, bring it back up to a boil on the fire for a minute before you eat it. That final boil is cheap insurance and it kills anything that might have got a foothold. Follow those and you are safe. A big full pot, boiled hard in a good thick box, brought back to a boil before eating. Simple and safe. Now I owe you the honest limits because I will not oversell this to you the way some folks would. The Haybox cooks by gentle, moist, held heat. So it does the things that gentle, moist heat does, and it cannot do the things it cannot do. It will not fry you an egg or sear a steak or crisp anything because those need high, dry, direct heat, and there is no fire in the box. It will not bake you a loaf of bread with a crust, though it will make a fine steamed pudding. It will not bring anything to a boil for you. Remember, it only holds heat. It does not make it, so you always need that first burst of fire to get it boiling. And for very large, dense things, a great big roast or a whole turkey, an ordinary Haybox may not hold enough heat to carry it all the way through safely, so those are best left to the oven. What the Haybox does and does better than anything is the long, slow, gentle cooking. Beans, grains, oats, rice, stews, soups, tough meats, dried peas, porridge, the very foods a thrifty kitchen leans on most. Know what it is for, and it will serve you faithfully. Now, I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters, and it is bigger than a box of hay. Think about what you burn to cook your food. If you cook with gas or with electricity, you are paying for every minute that burner runs. A pot of beans simmering 3 hours on the stove is 3 hours of fuel bought and paid for, and most of it, as I told you, went to warming your kitchen and slipping out the window, not into your food. The Haybox takes that 3 hours of burning and cuts it down to 10 minutes. All the rest of the cooking is done for free on heat you would have thrown away anyhow. Over a year of a family's cooking, that is a great deal of fuel and a great deal of money that simply stops going out the door. And here's the quiet truth of why you have never heard of it. There is no money in it for anyone. Nobody can sell you a monthly bill for a box of hay. Nobody can put a brand on a wool blanket and a wooden crate. The appliance makers would far rather sell you an electric cooker that plugs into the wall and adds to your power bill every time you use it. So the old knowledge got set on a high shelf and forgotten, not because it ever stopped working, but because there was no profit in teaching it. But it did not stop working. The physics have not changed one bit since my grandmother's day. Heat still holds in a box of hay exactly as it always did. And a family that knows this trick is a family that is a little harder to put in a corner. When the power goes out in an ice storm and the neighbor's electric stoves go dark and their freezers thaw, you can boil a pot on a candle stove or a bit of wood, box it up, and eat hot food same as any other day. When money is tight and every dollar of the fuel bill matters, you can cut your cooking fuel down to almost nothing. When you're out at a hunting camp or traveling or living off the grid on your own ground, you carry a pot to a boil once and let the box do the rest while you go about your work. That is not just saving a few pennies. That is a kind of freedom. It is the same freedom my people have always kept. The freedom of a man who understands the tools that feed him and is not left helpless without the wire and the bill. So here's what I want you to do this week. You do not need to buy a single special thing. Find a sturdy box or an old cooler you have lying about. Gather up some dry hay or old wool blankets or crumpled newspaper, whatever dry stuffing you can find. Make a good thick nest in the bottom, deep enough that your pot sits down in it with insulation all around, and have a fat cushion ready for the top. Then start with the easy one. Start with a pot of oats. Tonight, before you go to bed, put your oats and water in a heavy pot. Bring it to a hard boil for a minute or two and pack it into your box. Shut the lid and go to sleep. In the morning, open it up and see for yourself. Hot, creamy porridge cooked all night on no fire at all. Once you have seen it with your own eyes and eaten it with your own spoon, you will trust it, and then you can move on to a pot of beans, a pot of rice, a good winter stew, one pot at a time, the way you learn any skill worth having. Tell me in the comments below, what is the first thing you're gonna cook in your Haybox? The oats, a pot of beans, a Sunday stew. And if your grandmother or your grandfather cooked this way, or you remember a fireless cooker in an old kitchen somewhere, tell us all about it, because those memories are the very knowledge I am trying to keep alive on this channel. I read every single one, and the things you all share teach the new folks more than I ever could. If this was useful to you, subscribe and stay with me, for there is a great deal more of this old plain knowledge where this came from. Next time, since we have been speaking of cooking without fuel, I am going to show you the little tin can stove my people make for next to nothing, the one that boils a whole pot on a handful of twigs, so you have the fire to get your Haybox started even when the power is long gone. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, boil it once, box it up, waste nothing, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.